today's episode of Everybody Whispers. I'm Adam Elliott. Today's episode is sponsored by the New York City Men's Vasectomy Choir. It's a new singing, but they all got vasectomy. Sorry, it's a new kind of singing, but they have all gotten vasectomies. As in all the peoples in the choir. The New York City Men's Vasectomy Choir is a celebration of anti-procreation because there are already too many peoples. And the New York City Men's Vasectomy Choir sings songs about that and also other things too. The New York City Men's Vasectomy Choir, their dicks got snipped, not their vocal cords. Okay. Today I am delighted to be joined by artist Jim Tozzi. Jim is an artist, commercial director, producer, voice actor, and musician, best known for his work on the MTV2 comedy series Wonder Chosen and the Adult Swim show Xavier Renegade Angel, and as a member of the rock bands and art collective PFFR. Jim, welcome to Everybody Whispers.
Thanks for having me, Adam. It's nice to be here.
It's nice to have you. I'm a big fan of your work.
Thanks.
I've always enjoyed not only just seeing your shows, but your painted work and all of your merchandise that you put out there. You're such a multifaceted artist. At what point in your life did you realize you wanted to be an artist?
That's a good question. I'd say it at probably very early in my life, because it's the thing that I started doing at a very young age was drawing. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
I started drawing monsters when I was like 2 years old, and that's all I did for the rest of my life up until now. So there was no question ever that I would not be an artist.
I learned about you that you started, you stole a Super 8 camera and you started filming, like you started making movies with your figurines and puppets when you were a kid, right?
Yes, I stole a camera from my Aunt Evelyn and Uncle Tony. And I took it was a little, I wanted to do animation, so I took the camera and I didn't have a tripod, so I taped it down to my kitchen table. And I started trying to animate my Star Wars figures.
And something I find interesting about that is, back when you were doing that, did anyone ever tell you, like, Jim, get serious, you're never going to be able to turn this into a career? And then you actually did turn that into a career with Wonder Chosen. Did that ever compute for you when you started actually making a living doing what you were doing as a kid?
It was never, when I was growing up, it was never discouraged when I was doing weird art stuff.
Oh, so your parents encouraged you?
They didn't really encourage me, but they didn't discourage me either.
Okay.
So it was sort of a neutral balance situation within a very passive-aggressive realm that I grew up in.
And so, like I said, looking at your body of work, I mean, you went to Rhode Island School of Design, and you've played music, you've made TV shows, you've been a commercial director, a voice actor, and now and you work in acrylic, right? Painting.
Yeah, yes.
So, on a day-to-day basis, what do you think drives you most as an artist, or is it always changing? Like, are you more? What inspires you most right now? What medium?
Right now, it changes because I get bored. Like, when I do a painting, I feel like if the painting turns out good, I'm like, yeah, this painting's good. I'm gonna do a 1,000 paintings. But then, like, I start doing another one, and I'm like, I don't want to do this. I can't do 998 more paintings. I gotta do something else. So then I'll, like, make a puppet or do some sewing, or maybe, just go out in the street and draw on a mailbox.
Everybody whispers.
You once said, specifically about your time on Wonder Chosen, which is, kind of an all-time favorite show of mine. It was so irreverent for the time. It was irreverent for any time. But anyway, at the time, you said you wanted to polarize. You want to polarize people. You want half the people to hate what you're doing. What did you mean by that?
Well, I was re-quoting a quote from Vernon Chatman. Because I'm not smart enough to think of something like that. But because I also questioned, I was like, what is it about the show that makes it so polarizing? And he was like, well, when you create something like this, you want half the people to hate it and half the people to love it. And maybe a few sprinkled in between that are just confused. And I was like, okay, that makes sense. And then I kind of understood, like, that whole, I guess the whole attraction of what made it a sort of cult hit and affected you in such a way.
Do you think a show like Wonder Shows could be made today?
No. A lot of people, not a lot of people, but I hear that people will just, sometimes they'll get in touch with me and they'll be like, you couldn't make this show. You can't make Wonder Shows in today. Although we'd love to have like a third season. I don't know how you would do it. And I was like, yeah, I don't know.
Oh no.
It's definitely like of its time. Because, I mean, and then that plus people taking like parts of it out of context and being like, this is crazy. This is like racist, or, this is just, you can't do this now. How did they do it? Why? And sometimes it seems like they get upset, but it's like, you gotta see it in context.
Well, I think the reason why I was able, it was coming up at a time when obviously South Park was much more part of the zeitgeist and Family Guy, and people were getting away with a lot more, which you can always get away with a lot more in animation and puppet work and the type of work you were doing on Wonder Shows. And so I agree, but let me ask you this, especially as it relates to your art today, are you trying to make people a little uncomfortable with your work? And do you think there's value in being made uncomfortable with art?
Yeah, that's pretty much the whole point for me, is to like make people uncomfortable, but in a good way. I just feel like a lot of people just kind of glaze over things, and I don't know, I like taking something very familiar and somewhat somewhat, what do you call it, like, unassuming, and then doing something to it that makes people say, oh, wait, someone put a tit on that puppet. What's going on?
I want to throw a hypothetical situation out at you. You tell me what you would do in this situation, okay? So, let's say this girl followed you on Instagram and you realized you were going to see a show that she was performing in a few days. So you slide into her DMs and say, hey, I think I'm seeing a show you're in. And she's like, oh, dope. You should come say hi after the show. And you're like, say less. And she's like, bet, right? And like, this girl is super cute, so you're all excited and you meet her after the show and you're like, so what else you got going on? And she's like, I wrote a book. And you're like, I would love to read the book. And she's like, well, the link to order it is in my Instagram bio. And you order it, but you realize the book is about menstruation. And so by now, you've agreed to read the book. And so you say to yourself, I gotta read the book so I can maybe learn more about menstruation. And also I can hit her up after I read the book and ask her to get coffee and we can discuss it. Because, again, you think this girl is super cute and reading the book is a great follow-up for a potential date, right? Now let's say you read the book and you run into a friend of yours who knows the girl too, and you tell her about this entire situation and how you committed to reading the book about menstruation. And the friend says, oh, wow, did you know she had a boyfriend? And you're like, nah, I didn't. Is it like serious? And she's like, yeah, it's super serious. They've been together forever. They're practically married. So hypothetically, hypothetically speaking, would you ever read a book again?
Like, that experience would turn me off completely from reading anything.
Yeah, that's what I think too.
All literature.
Yeah,
I'd be like, no, never again.
I do think that menstruation is a beautiful thing, but
It's necessary,
yeah,
not necessarily beautiful.
look at that. We're so woke, man. Just two guys talking about
We
menstruation.
have no right to talk about that
I
subject.
know, no, you're right.
Because
You're right.
you've never menstruated. I've never menstruated.
Jim, want to talk about Bird's tit?
There it is. Can you zoom in on that? Camera 3. Can we get camera 3 on that?
A Bird's tit.
What tree are we talking to? That one. That one.
So, tell us a little bit about, why did you choose Bird's tit to be your, kind of your calling card, sort of your sticker that you post around the city to get people to turn onto your work?
Well, I was inspired by this other artist named Wizard Skull. Have you heard of Wizard Skull?
No.
He does the sexy Ronald. Have you seen like the cut? He's like a topless cut Ronald, and he's got the cheese string with the fries. That's Wizard Skull. That's one of his stickers. So I saw that sticker, and I was like, oh, I got a light bulb went off, and I was like, I could do a sticker. Because it was exactly the kind of subversive thing I wanted to do. I was like, okay, Ronald McDonald, you know, it's like, yeah, got my attention, and it's funny. So I was like, what can I do? What kind of iconic sort of image can I take and subvert in a way to put on a sticker, to put out there?
And has anyone from Sesame Street reached out to you about this? Have they seen this?
Not yet, unfortunately.
Okay.
I did meet someone that worked on Sesame Street, and someone else that had met Frank Oz. And according to him, he said Frank Oz would love this.
I don't see why.
So I'm gonna go with that. I'm gonna assume Frank Oz will love it. The friend of mine, the same one that said Frank Oz would like Bird's tit, he said that he gave me a book about Jim Henson. It was like Jim Henson's diary or something. And it was like all his drawings from when he started to, up until the end. And I flipped through the book and I was like, all this stuff is still influencing me to this day. I'm using this. And then I started watching old Sesame Streets from when I grew up, the late 60s, early 70s ones. And the animation in that, I was like, oh, I'm basically recreating this animation. So it's been a continual line from since I started watching television, probably when I was like 2 years old, to now, 53 years later, 53 and a half years later. I'll be 56 in October.
You don't look a day over 50, baby.
Oh, thank you.
You have a really unique, and again, I keep using this word, but an irreverent and really unique sense of humor. And I feel like that bleeds into all the work you do, but you also do some commercial work as a director. Do you ever feel limited by brands you work for when maybe you have an idea that's just like it's too risque? How do you try to subvert some of the kind of corporate pressures when you're being hired to do something for a brand, but you still want to try to inject some of your own originality into the work?
Yeah, well, I tried to do that for a long time when I was doing commercials, but I realized I couldn't do that, so I stopped doing commercials in 2016. I didn't really make the conscious choice, but I think the ad business decided I wasn't good as a commercial director. But yeah, I always try to add like some weird stuff, or because I'm like, it's a commercial. It's like, you got 30 seconds to tell this story. I always wanted to throw something that would kind of get your attention, but like I said, I don't think advertisers want you to do that. They don't want to rock the boat at all. They just want, they have their one singular point that they want to get to make you either feel inferior or that you lack something. And that was also like, I can't do that. I don't want to do that to people. I don't want to put that out there. commercials I had done were funny, like, comedy commercials. And I loved working with the actors and creating sets and all that stuff. But the idea behind just selling is, to me, it's not good.
Yeah.
I feel like it hurts people.
When you were doing that kind of commercial work, because knowing how unique of a voice you have as an artist, did you ever come off of those sets feeling like, shit, man, like I didn't really do the thing that I feel like I was born to do? And was that part of what contributed to you stopping to do commercial work?
Yeah, that was part of it. But it was difficult too because I loved doing it. I loved working with the actors, like I said, and creating this like little world, even if it's just for like a couple days. And there were some agencies that I worked with, creative teams, art directors and writers that were really on board with, doing weird stuff, and those were always the best, most fun things to work on. I'd say 80% of the commercials were just very corporate, boring. You couldn't really, I mean, if the creative team was good, it was satisfying, but it was always the clients that would really kind of just make the whole thing very bland.
Jim, where can people find your work? Online or social media?
Well, on the gram.
Yeah.
Have you heard of the gram?
We'll put the link.
It's like TikTok, but it's like still photos.
Cool.
And on the street, and in a lot of places in Manhattan, there's stickers and drawings out in public.
And your merchandise as well.
Yeah, there's merch.
There's
merch, but yeah, if you go to the Instagram, you can find it.
All right. Jim.
Wait, I just have one question.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but why are we whispering?
That's a good question. We have to stop for today, but I will let you know at a certain point in time.
Like in writing or like a DM?
Yeah.
How? Okay.
We'll be in
Can
touch.
you tell me how you're gonna let me know?
Yeah.
You'll just be in touch.
We'll tell you after the show.
I'm probably not gonna hear, right? That's just like, you're just blowing me off.
I want to thank Jim Tozzi for being with us today. Jim, thank you for being on this episode of Everybody Whispers.
Adam, thanks for having me. It's been a real pleasure.
Everybody whisper, everybody whisper, everybody whisper.